So the first episode of Volume 8 is out, and what do I think? It's alright, isn't it? In case you're wondering, I did have a video intended for today, aside from this, because obviously the reviews come out a bit later. I had a video on the RWBY timeline, for not Volume 8 obviously, but like a video on the birthdays, which didn't upload because, well, first it got copyright blocked, and then when I re-edited it and I re-uploaded it, there was a blackout mid-upload, and I did it overnight because I had to sleep early because I had to get up earlier than normal. So I didn't get to see the upload finish, and of course, the one time I do that, a blackout hits, and it doesn't finish uploading. So, that sucks. Anyway, this episode accomplishes what it needed to. It gives us a heads up on where the characters are, it gives us the clear objectives of get people into a crater and get Amity up again, and watch out because Ironwood is big scary bad man. And yeah, that's fine and all. I'm not really shocked though. I mean, historically, RWBY has had fairly decent first episodes, aside from the last two volumes, which I thought had pretty crap first episodes, which apparently is an unpopular opinion, but I thought they were crap and they were boring, and I kept going, why the fuck are you doing that? I wasn't a fan of Volume 6 and 7's openers, but Volume 5 had a good opener. Aside from the reuse of the Volume 4 end credit scene, which could have just been cut down to just the first bit, to give us an idea of what's happening, and then, simple as that. But yeah, the episode's fine enough. It's nothing special, and it sure has failed to garner any hype from me, but I think that's more of an issue with the tone of the episode, because it's just sort of boring. Like, it's not fun to watch, and I think of all the problems Serious Mode RWBY has generated, that's probably the main one. The fun factor of RWBY is really lost. And that's a risk you can take when going from lighthearted to serious, but some series make it work better than others. Like Transformers Cybertron is no masterwork of writing, but it did go from goofy lighthearted bullshit to a semi-serious story really well. And there are some actually really good moments like the death of Vector Prime, which unironically is more emotional than anything in RWBY, probably even more than Pyrrha's death, which is like the closest I can think. Pyrrha's death was the last time I felt a serious emotion over RWBY that wasn't anger that I remember. If I don't remember another moment that made me feel like that, then it probably wasn't important enough to remember. And speaking of Cybertron in the context of RWBY, the final battle between Optimus and Galvatron is single-handedly better than the entirety of RWBY, and I stand by that. It is the best shit I've ever seen. On a more substantial, meaningful note, I guess Transformers Armada is sort of the inverse of RWBY. Like, the lighthearted shit was not great, and it was boring, and it was poorly written, and it was just not fun to watch. But then the Unicron saga, when it got serious, is legitimately extremely good and makes up for all the build-up. And Starscream's death is only rivaled by Dinobot's death for the most emotional death in an animated series that I've seen. RWBY, however, just sort of isn't fun to watch half the time. Like, yeah, okay, I enjoyed Volume 7 because it was competently made, more or less. For RWBY, it was hyper-competent, but for outside of the context, it's more or less moderately competent, usually. But this first episode of Volume 8 is just sort of there. It doesn't feel like watching the serious part of a fun adventure, or like watching a serious adventure generally. It's like watching a checklist of things that need to be established. Place characters, set objective, establish villain, bad intro. Not a fan of the intro song. Don't like it. It's not great. And there are smaller issues I had too. Like the shot of Cinder and Neo walking up the stairs is really weird looking to me, and it's probably just a result of the animate first, camera later mentality that I've seen spread around, that I did do a video discussing the flaws with the help of a friend who I will link in the description because I feel generous today. But honestly, this shot looks bad. Don't animate first and then camera later. Camera first, animate later. Just be fucking consistent where the characters are. And like, this shot kind of confused me at first. Like, with how it's framed, I thought that was Ironwood, that was a reflection, and this was like Crow or something, and out of respect, Ironwood allowed Crow to see Clover's body, because Ironwood isn't evil, remember? But no, it's just a shot from between fucking Elm and Vine's shoulders, and Ironwood, is just there. Oh yeah, Ironwood, for a moment I actually liked him again. Like, the thing with Ironwood, right, is that he was what carried Volume 7 for me. And only in the last episode when he randomly shot Oscar did I have the classic RWBY moment of all I loved being shattered. Which, at least in Neo's case, is excusable, because that's what she does. It's like, Ironwood's supposed to just be a bloke who lost all of his hope, right? Why did he shoot Oscar? People have responded to me with, it makes sense because he's hopeless, and it makes sense because Oscar was his enemy and Oscar was a problem for him. But when I imagine a rational human being losing all hope and deciding to do everything they can do to preserve humanity regardless of the cost, I imagine a gradual slope that extends what that regardless of the cost means. You know, the sort of thing where you don't immediately jump from willing to have restraint to kill your best friend. Like maybe on the third or fourth attempt to talk sense into Ironwood he'd get shot, but in this case, Oscar shouldn't have been shot here. Ironwood has lost all hope, right? He's gone down here hopeless. His best friend, one of his only 3 or 4 actual friends, shows up and tells him he's wrong. And instead of putting him in jail or even just smacking him upside the head, he just tries to shoot him. But now they've tried to bring back more or less his character. He calls up Penny because he's worried about her, and I want to believe that is genuine worry. And then he responds to Ruby's Mantle thing with, if we don't get Atlas out of here, humanity is fucked, as opposed to fuck Mantle and fuck all the people in Mantle because they're not as important. These 2 sentences convey 2 very different character aspects, and I'm chuffed as hell that they went with the former. But then he shoots Sleet in the face. Are you kidding me? This goes around to the issue of, oh no, we made Ironwood sound like a well-meaning person again, who's doing what opposes our characters, but whom isn't doing something objectively evil, because whether it's better to prioritize all lives, or saving only a few lives that you know you can save instead of risking it all to save everyone, is more of a subjective matter on what you believe is more right to do. How can we remind people that he is evil bad man? I know, bang. Like, why did he need to kill Sleet? I find it funny, thinking about it now, that I remember Sleet and Carmilla's names, but I don't remember the happy huntresses outside of Fiona. Because no one would shut up about the cute little faunus girl, the little sheep. It's just funny to me. Put Sleet in jail. Martial law is in place. You have authority over him and Carmilla. Strip one of them of their position and throw them into prison. You still have Dr. Arthur fucking Watts in prison, and he is a danger to everyone, and you're going around killing people who just suggest the idea of turning against you instead of acting on it. Do you not realize you are being irrational right now? Put him in jail. And, you know, some people might say the point is that he's being irrational, but you shouldn't make him irrational. He's not doing everything else. Like, people would say, oh, what he's doing, everything he's doing is irrational. I think what? No! What he's doing is rational, even if I wouldn't do it. I mean, I'm not cut out to be a leader. I couldn't make a hard choice like what he's got in front of him. I could not do that. I'm definitely not cut out for that. But his rationale is, we're all fucked. If we get Atlas up into the air where Salem can't reach it, at least humanity will live. Right? And that train of thought makes sense. Something irrational would be like, we have a chance to stop Salem. Let's throw Atlas into space. That sort of line where you think, where is the rationale? Where is the logic in this? What Ironwood's doing has logic. He's condemning the rest of the world to die so that all of humanity for sure can survive, while RWBY is trying to save all of humanity while also risking all of humanity dying if Atlas doesn't get into space and Salem wins. Right? One of them is going in with the thought of, we can win, and the other one is going in the thought of, we're fucked. And when a fleet of Grimm like that shows up, you can definitely understand the 2 different trains of logic there. Both make sense. I'm not even going against RWBY here, because she is not completely wrong. Okay. I want to say, I didn't write this in the script because I forgot. The scene where Yang's like, we said we'd follow you, but, you know, not everything's worked out, is exactly what I wanted. Like, just... Well, it's not exactly what I wanted, but it's the start of what I wanted. People questioning RWBY. People going, you know, RWBY, everything's fucked. And you kind of led us here. Like, that's what I want. That's really what I wanted. Because, you know, all of the lying and shit and all of the stuff they done with Ironwood, although I guess in this, it is kind of Blake and Yang's fault for breaking his trust with Robin, because if they didn't do that, then maybe they could have salvaged something. But... and I'm glad we had that. I also liked that the slum was all faunus people. Like, they didn't bring any attention to it, which is fine, right? You don't need to be like, oh, all of you are faunus. That's incredible. You just need to show it. And they showed it, and it's good. It's good. It's good. Oh, yeah, I guess I should address the villain scene. It's alright. The volume opening with Best Girl is nice. but it's a pretty bland scene overall, at least until Tyrion walks in and starts eating the scenery. Salem is boring as ever, Emerald gets shot down, which is funny as usual, and Tyrion has all the best lines. Mercury, however, once again gets shafted with no lines at all, which is just wrong and unjust. Is it because he and Tyrion are like the same character, just Tyrion's more crazy? Tyrion, Mercury, and Emerald scene, I think it was in Volume 7, was actually really good, and give us more of that. Like, screw Salem, screw Cinder, screw Hazel, just these villains, they're entertaining to watch. Like, I'm not super invested into Emerald, but I do like when she interacts with Mercury because they have a good dynamic. Oh yeah, and there's new designs for Emerald, Mercury, Hazel, Winter, Rare. I don't care. Who cares? Why are people making a fuss over new designs? It's just something they do nowadays. Oh, we got a new design for the characters. As if the old design wasn't good enough. I mean, new designs is the reason why Weiss is no longer mainly white in color. Her color scheme is now blue. Blake's color scheme is now white. Ruby's color scheme is now mainly grey. And Yang's is, well, hers was always mostly brown. So, I guess that's consistent. But it doesn't matter to me half the time. But I do infinitely prefer the old designs for Mercury and Emerald. I don't know how I feel about Hazel yet. I'm not sure, but he shows off his sides, which look really disgusting to me for some reason. And that's a lot, really. That was the episode. It certainly was an episode. And it feels like a necessary evil. That's a bit dramatic. It feels like a necessary boring to get to the good stuff. Hopefully the volume can continue with this moderate level of quality, but actually be fun to watch next time instead of just sort of putting me to sleep.